Hi, I'm G, this is my art channel, and in this video I'm showing you how I painted a very loose kind of background to my begonia flower, very simple background. And I did this with watercolor markers, and usually I use watercolor markers in a very tight, very detailed kind of way, but I wanted to show that you can use them to do very expressive painting. So I start up in the top left hand corner here, and I'm just using cadmium yellow hue to start and just laying down a few broad, not very detailed kind of strokes of color, because these are for flowers that are in the background, and I want these background flowers to be very fuzzy and a little bit like soft and out of focus, a bit blurred. So just a few strokes, and then I'm straight in with some water, and I'm using a size 6 brush here, a sable round, so it's a bigger brush and it holds a lot of water, and that water is really useful obviously for mixing all of these colors together in the background. Like I said, trying not to be too fussy because I want these to be nice and blurry. As you can see, there's quite a lot of colour up there just for a few strokes of the actual watercolour markers. So all you can see me doing now is taking that brush, going back into the clean water and adding clean water to the colour that's already on the paper here. And what I'm looking to do is, take these colours down a notch along the edges. So I'm trying to fade out the edges so I'm not left with a really strong bit of colour, making a very noticeable and very strong drying line. So I'm using the round brush, which has got this nice kind of pointed tip, which allows me to do some of these little interior details as well as the fading out. So I can get in here and I can really sort of pull that color to the edges, and I'm not going to sacrifice any of the detail along the edge of the actual flower itself, because the round's got that lovely pointed tip that really will help me do some of those details. Remember, these petals and these flowers are in the background, so I don't want them to start, jostling for attention with the flower in the foreground. That begonia in the foreground is the main focus of the picture. So I've got to make sure that all of this colour in the background is all kind of fuzzy and diffuse and hasn't got any kind of sharp, lovely edges like the actual flower in the foreground. So I can achieve that background-foreground depth by making sure the background is all blurry and expressive. And you can see me adding lots of water there to make sure that all of the colours that I've put on, they kind of run together, and I'm not going to be left with some very distinct edges and outlines. The bigger brush really helps for this kind of thing because being a bigger brush, it holds a lot more water. So I can really slap down a lot of water and start moving it around straight away, blurring and blending all of those colors. And also because it's a bigger brush, even though it's got that pointed tip as a round, I'm not going to get as fussy and noodly about the details as I would if I was still using my size 3 round, which is really going to encourage me to start trying to get a bit too fussy. Bigger brush for the background is always going to keep it a bit looser and a bit more expressive and a lot more watery. You also might have noticed that when I'm painting the colours in the background and I'm activating these colours, I'm letting them run together. I'm not letting one section dry before painting another like I would the actual flower itself. I'm getting some more water on and I'm activating that colours, and I'm letting each of the edges bleed and run together, unlike the actual flower itself. And here you can see the 3 colours that I used for the green areas of the background. So I went with a sap green, a hooker's green, and an indigo. And this bit's slightly more speeded up because you got the idea of how I'm approaching this now. And I'm putting on all of the colours together, the marker colours first of all. Then I'm getting the brush and I'm activating them with water, and I'm just moving and smoothing and swooshing that colour around the background, making sure that each time I add colour along one of the edges, I kind of fade that edge out a little bit and I don't get a very strong and distinct drying line where the colours end. When I was doing this bottom right hand corner, it looked too pale, so I went back in with some of the markers while the paper was still wet and tried to put some more colour on and move it around with the brush. And it worked okay, but I think there were still a few brush strokes showing, so in future I'll probably try and get all my marker colours on before I add the water, rather than try and make some corrections like that as I go along. Then there were just a couple of bits in this top left hand corner here just to add a little bit more clarity to the edge of those flowers that are in the background, still keeping it fuzzy but adding a little bit extra. So there you go, a very simple, washy, expressive background, drawn and painted with just a handful of watercolor markers, and of course that nice big brush with lots of water to flood and move the color around. And if you missed the original video showing actually how I painted the begonia flower itself using the watercolor markers, then you can check out the tutorial for that. I'll leave the links for that below. And please don't forget to subscribe, share, and like. It really helps support the channel. Thank you for watching.